A biting wind sliced through the historic avenues of Boston, a merciless gale that made Harrison Grant pull the collar of his bespoke Brioni suit tighter, a futile gesture against the piercing chill. His mind, a whirlwind of pending acquisitions and the stark silence of his Beacon Hill penthouse, was suddenly pierced by an unfamiliar noise, a muffled sob that cut through the howl of the wind. Harrison paused, his sharp eyes scanning the frost-covered expanse of the Boston Public Garden. There, almost swallowed by the deepening twilight, two diminutive figures huddled together on a weathered park bench. A surge of adrenaline shot through him as his heart hammered against his ribs. "Hello," he called, his voice carrying over the wind as he approached with caution. "Is anyone there?" Two pairs of enormous eyes, luminous with a mixture of terror and nascent hope, fixed on him. Harrison felt his throat tighten in shock. They were just children, a pair of identical girls who couldn't be more than 4 or 5. "My God," he murmured, dropping into a crouch to meet their gaze. "Are you all right? Where are your parents?" The twins offered no reply, their small bodies racked with violent shivers. One of them, the girl on the left, was clutching something tightly to her chest, a flicker of gold from a chain catching the dim glow of a nearby gas lamp. Acting on pure instinct, Harrison stripped off his heavy cashmere overcoat and enveloped the two girls in its warmth. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice a gentle balm. "I'm going to help you." His fingers, usually so steady, trembled as he pulled out his phone and dialed his executive assistant, Jessica. "I need you to come to the Boston Public Garden immediately. Bring warm clothes for kids, blankets, food. Yes, for children around 4 years old, I think. And call a doctor, hurry." Ending the call, Harrison refocused on the twins. Their lips had a bluish tint, and their tangled curls were dusted with crystalline flakes of snow. The girl on the right sniffled, rubbing a small red nose. "What are your names?" Harrison attempted again, his tone soft. The girl on the left, the one guarding the object, whispered a name so faintly it was nearly lost to the wind. What Harrison leaned in closer. "Lily," she repeated, her voice a fragile tremor. "And she's Rose. Lily and Rose." A wave of momentary relief washed over Harrison as he managed a small smile. "Those are beautiful names. I'm Harrison. You must be very cold and hungry, right?" Both girls gave a tiny, shivery nod. "All right, let's fix that," Harrison declared, his gaze landing on a 24-hour convenience store across the street. "Wait here. I'll be right back. I promise." He was reluctant to leave them even for a moment, but the sight of their trembling spurred him into action. His polished shoes skidded on the icy pavement as he darted across the street, startling the drowsy clerk inside the store. "Hot chocolate," he panted, "2 large cups and cookie sandwiches, anything you've got." He returned minutes later, his arms laden with provisions, to find the twins exactly as he had left them, a small bundle wrapped in his $1,000 coat. Here, Harrison offered the steaming cups. "Careful, it's hot." Lily and Rose accepted them with shaky hands, their eyes widening in wonder at the first warm sip. "Good," James asked, smiling as they nodded enthusiastically. As the girls drank, Harrison took a closer look. Their dresses, once charming, were now soiled and torn. There was no sign of a backpack or any belongings except for that locket. He was sure he'd seen a design like it somewhere. "Lily," he said softly, "that's a lovely locket. Where did you get it?" The girl's hand flew to the necklace instinctively, her eyes welling up with tears. "Mommy," she whispered. Harrison's heart constricted. Where in God's name was their mother? The screech of tires on snow announced Jessica's arrival. She leapt from the town car, her arms full of bags. "Mr. Grant, my goodness, what happened?" she exclaimed, her expression one of utter shock as she took in the scene. Later, Jessica Harrison muttered, taking the supplies, "Is the doctor on the way?" Jessica, still looking stunned, nodded. Harrison turned back to the twins. "Lily Rose, "This is my friend Jessica. She brought warm clothes for you. How about we get you warmed up a bit?" In the ensuing moments, Harrison and Jessica worked as a team, bundling the twins into soft, warm layers. The girls remained silent, their wide eyes never straying from each other as the adults tended to them. The doctor arrived shortly thereafter, conducting a quick examination on the bench itself. "They're dehydrated and mildly hypothermic," he informed Harrison, "but nothing a warm environment and a good meal can't fix. They need care, Mr. Grant, and likely psychological assistance." Harrison nodded grimly, his mind racing. What was the right move? The police? Child Protective Services? The idea of turning them over to a faceless bureaucracy felt wrong. "Lily Rose," he knelt before them. "Do you trust me?" The girls shared a silent, profound glance. Finally, Lily reached out a tiny, frozen hand and touched Harrison's cheek. "Yes," she whispered. Something shattered inside Harrison at that moment. He knew his life had irrevocably changed. "Great," he smiled, rising to his feet and extending his hands. "Because I know a place where we can eat warm waffles with lots of chocolate. What do you say?" For the first time, the faint outline of a smile touched their lips. They took his hands and stood up. As they walked towards the car, Harrison couldn't help but notice the way they moved in perfect unison, like two halves of a whole, and that locket. Why did it seem so hauntingly familiar? Settling them into the back seat, Harrison met Jessica's eyes. "Cancel all my appointments tomorrow," he instructed, "and prepare the guest room in my penthouse." Jessica nodded, her face full of unasked questions. As the car glided through the snow-dusted streets of Boston, Harrison watched them in the rearview mirror. Lily and Rose had fallen asleep, their heads leaning against one another, Lily's locket casting a soft glow under the passing streetlights. Harrison didn't know what lay ahead, but he was certain of one thing. His life had just taken a sharp, unexpected turn, and he would do whatever it took to protect the two mysterious girls fate had placed in his path. The first rays of dawn had just begun to streak the sky when Harrison woke with a jolt, disoriented for a moment on the living room sofa. The memories of the previous night crashed over him. The twins, the biting cold, the enigmatic locket. He rose silently and padded to the guest room. There, Lily and Rose slept soundly, their small hands intertwined even in their dreams. A wave of profound tenderness, followed by a spike of sheer panic, washed over him. What was he thinking? He knew nothing about raising children, let alone two traumatized girls who seemed to have no one. His phone buzzed, a harsh reminder of a scheduled business trip to London that very morning, a deal worth millions that couldn't wait. Harrison raked a hand through his hair, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Then an idea sparked in his mind. His grandmother, Margaret. Margaret Sinclair, a formidable 72-year-old woman, had been a widow for a decade, living alone in a sprawling manor in Brookline. Harrison didn't visit nearly enough, a fact that pricked his conscience, but now she might be his only solution. With trembling fingers, he dialed the number he knew by heart. Hello, Margaret's voice, strong and clear, came through the line. "Grandma, it's Harrison. I need your help." Half an hour later, Harrison was packing a bag with clothes and toys Jessica had procured for the twins. He explained the situation as best he could, assuring Lily and Rose they were going somewhere safe and warm. "You'll love my grandma," he promised, seeing their anxious expressions. "She makes the best cookies in the world." The drive to Margaret's manor was quiet. The twins sat in the back, their eyes wide as the city's dense architecture gave way to the tree-lined avenues of the suburbs. Harrison watched them in the mirror, his chest tight. Was this the right thing to do? When they arrived, Margaret was already on the porch of her imposing Victorian home, her eyes widening at the two small figures emerging from Harrison's car. "Harrison Grant," she began, her tone a mix of surprise and reproach. "When you said you needed help, I never imagined this." Harrison swallowed hard. "Grandma, I can explain. These are Lily and Rose. I found them last night alone in the public garden. They need a safe place to stay for a few days while I handle my trip and figure out what to do." Margaret studied the twins for a long, unreadable moment. Lily and Rose instinctively shrank closer to one another under her intense gaze. Then, to Harrison's immense relief, his grandmother's stern features softened. She knelt, bringing herself to the girl's level. "Hello, dears," she said gently. "You must be hungry after that trip. How about we go inside and make some waffles?" The twins' eyes lit up at the mention of waffles, and they timidly took a step toward her. Harrison let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Thank you, Grandma," he murmured. Margaret waved a dismissive hand. "Come in, Harrison. We have a lot to talk about." In the vast, cozy kitchen, Margaret moved with practiced ease, whipping up waffle batter while Harrison set the table. The twins watched, still hand in hand, their eyes taking in everything. So Elizabeth began casually as she poured the batter into the waffle iron. "You found them in the square." Harrison nodded, recounting the night's events. Margaret listened in silence, her gaze shifting between him and the girls. "And the police?" she finally asked. "Social services." Harrison ran a hand through his hair, a nervous tic. I didn't know what to do. They seemed so scared I couldn't just hand them over to the system." Margaret sighed. "Harrison, I understand your impulse to protect them, but please," Grandma Harrison interrupted. "Just for a few days until I get back from London, and we can handle this properly. They need a safe place, someone they can trust." Margaret was silent for a long moment, her eyes moving between Harrison and the twins. Finally, she nodded. "All right," she agreed, "but as soon as you return, we'll handle this legally understood." A wave of relief washed over Harrison. "Thank you, Grandma. I promise as soon as I'm back, we'll sort everything out." The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of frantic calls as Harrison rearranged his schedule. Meanwhile, Margaret took command with startling efficiency. "Helen," she called to her longtime housekeeper, "prepare the blue guest room for the girls' 2 beds, please." Helen, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, looked briefly surprised, but nodded without a word. Margaret then dedicated herself to making the twins feel welcome, giving them a tour of the manor, the large backyard, and the book-lined library. To Harrison's surprise, Lily and Rose slowly began to open up, their eyes shining with curiosity. Finally, it was time for Harrison to leave. He knelt before the twins, his heart heavy. "Lily Rose," he began gently. "I have to go on a work trip, but I promise I'll be back in a few days. You'll be safe here. With my Grandma Margaret, she'll take very good care of you." The girls looked at him with wide, solemn eyes. Then, to his astonishment, Lily stepped forward and gave him a hug, with Rose quickly following suit. Harrison felt tears well in his eyes as he held the 2 small bodies. "Come back soon," Lily whispered. Harrison swallowed the lump in his throat. "I'll be back," he promised. "Take care of each other, okay?" Standing, he turned to his grandmother. "Thank you again, Grandma. I'll call every day to see how things are going." Margaret nodded, her expression a mix of concern and resolve. "Go in peace, Harrison. We'll be fine here." As Harrison drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror. There they were, Lily and Rose, holding hands, with Margaret standing behind them, a protective hand on each of their shoulders. It was an image he would never forget. With Harrison gone, Margaret found herself alone with 2 frightened girls and a million questions. But years of wisdom had taught her that some questions could wait. What mattered now was making Lily and Rose feel safe and loved. "Well, girls," she said, forcing a cheerful smile, "how about we check on how your room is coming along?" The old guest room, known as the Blue Room for its soft sky-blue walls, was being rapidly transformed. Helen had worked with impressive efficiency. 2 twin beds now stood side by side, covered in floral quilts, and a low bookshelf was already partially filled with children's books Margaret had saved from Harrison's childhood. "What do you think?" Margaret asked, watching the twins' reactions. Lily and Rose looked around, their eyes wide with awe. Then, to Margaret's surprise, Rose let go of her sister's hand and ran to one of the beds, bouncing on it with a small squeal of delight. Lily, after a moment's hesitation, did the same. Margaret's heart melted at the sound of their laughter, a sound that had been absent from her home for far too long. "Well, it seems they approve," she said, smiling. "Now how about we look for some toys to make the room even more fun?" The next few hours were spent exploring the manor's attic. Margaret was surprised at how many old toys she had kept: carefully preserved porcelain dolls, a small puppet theater, puzzles, and board games. Each discovery was met with excited gasps from the girls. As the day progressed, Margaret noticed a subtle shift in them. They were still inseparable, but their distinct personalities were beginning to emerge. Lily was the quieter, more observant one, her eyes always watchful. Rose, on the other hand, was bolder, always the first to try something new. During dinner, expertly prepared by Helen, Margaret gently probed for information. "Those girls," she began casually. "Do you like stories?" Both nodded eagerly. "How about you tell me a story about yourselves? Where do you come from?" A silence fell. Lily and Rose exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Lily spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "We came from far away. Mommy said we had to wait on the bench. She was coming back." Margaret's heart tightened. "And how long did you wait, dear?" Rose answered this time, her voice trembling slightly. "Many days. It got cold." Margaret fought to maintain her composure. How could anyone abandon these precious children? She wanted to ask more, but the fear in their eyes held her back. "Well," she said, forcing a smile, "you don't have to wait anymore. You're safe here." That night, while helping the twins get ready for bed, Margaret noticed something she hadn't before. Even while changing into pajamas, Lily refused to take off the golden locket around her neck, clutching it protectively if anyone came too close. A pang of curiosity struck Margaret. There was something familiar about that locket, but she couldn't place it. She decided not to press the issue. After tucking them in and reading a bedtime story, Margaret retired to her own room. Sitting in her favorite armchair, she reflected on the day's surprising turn of events. Her quiet, orderly home had become a place of life and mystery. Helen knocked softly, entering with a cup of tea. "The girls are asleep, ma'am," she informed. "I must say it's been a long time since I've seen you so lively." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Lively? I'm exhausted. That's what I am." Helen smiled. "Maybe so, but you're more alive than I've seen you in years. These girls, if they brought something back to this house." Margaret sighed, taking the teacup. "Yes, they did, along with a million questions." As she prepared for bed, Margaret couldn't stop thinking about Lily's locket. Why did it look so familiar? And what was the story behind the two mysterious girls who had landed on her doorstep? With these thoughts swirling, she fell asleep, unaware that the coming days would bring revelations that would change her life forever. The scent of vanilla and cinnamon wafted through the kitchen of the Sinclair Manor, a sweet, comforting aroma that seemed to chase away the ghosts of the past. Margaret, wearing a floral apron, smiled as she watched Lily and Rose enthusiastically mixing cookie dough. "Careful not to spill, dears," she warned gently, helping Rose steady the bowl. The twins, with flour smudged on their faces and bright smiles, seemed lost in a world of simple joy. It was hard to believe they were the same silent, frightened children from just a few days ago. Grandma Meg Lily called, her voice still shy but warm with affection. "Can we put chocolate chips in this?" Margaret's heart skipped a beat at the nickname. "Of course, my love," she replied, handing them a bag of chocolate chips. "Here, let's add a handful." While the girls busied themselves with the dough, Margaret allowed herself a moment of reflection. The manor, so long a place of quiet memories, now hummed with a new energy. The sound of children's laughter echoed in the halls, but with the joy came a persistent anxiety. The locket, always around Lily's neck, was a constant, gleaming reminder of the unanswered questions. Grandma Meg looked Rose's excited voice brought her back to the present. The girl had formed a heart-shaped cookie, slightly lopsided but full of charm. "It's beautiful," dear Margaret praised, helping her place it on the baking sheet. "I'm sure it will be the tastiest of all." While the cookies baked, Margaret led the girls into the garden. The sprawling green space was a paradise for them. "Look," Lily Rose exclaimed, pointing to a butterfly. "It's just like in the book Grandma Meg showed us." Lily, usually the quieter twin, ran after her sister, their laughter mingling with the birdsong. Margaret watched them from a stone bench, her heart a mixture of joy and melancholy. Lillian would have loved to see them like this, she murmured to herself, tears welling in her eyes. As if sensing the shift in her mood, Lily stopped playing and approached, her large, worried eyes fixed on Margaret. "Grandma Meg, are you sad?" she asked, placing a small hand on Margaret's. Margaret blinked away the tears, forcing a smile. "No, dear. I was just thinking about someone I loved very much." Lily nodded with a surprising seriousness for one so young. Then, to Margaret's astonishment, the girl slipped the golden locket from her neck and offered it. "Mommy said this brings luck," Lily explained. "You can keep it for a while if you want." Margaret's heart seized. With trembling hands, she took the locket, its familiar weight a shock against her palm. For a moment, time stood still, memories of Lillian, young and radiant, flooding her mind. "Thank you, Lily," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot to me." Seeing the exchange, Rose joined them on the bench. "Grandma Meg, can you tell us a story?" she asked, her eyes gleaming. Margaret smiled, tucking the locket safely into her apron pocket. "Of course, my dears. How about the story of the brave princess and her magical sister?" The girls settled on either side of her as she spun a tale of adventure and magic, marveling at how easily they had become part of her life, as if they had always belonged there. The rest of the afternoon was a happy blur of picking flowers, playing hide-and-seek with Helen, and finally devouring the freshly baked cookies. "These are the best cookies in the whole world," Rose declared, her mouth full. "I completely agree," Margaret laughed, pouring them milk. As the girls ate, Margaret found herself studying them, noting the way they tilted their heads or wrinkled their noses, mannerisms that were so achingly reminiscent of Lillian. So Grandma Meg Lily called, breaking her reverie. "Can we read a book before bed?" "But of course," Margaret answered. "Let's pick one from the library." The library, with its towering shelves and comforting smell of old paper, was one of their favorite spots. They chose an illustrated book of fairy tales, and settling into the large leather armchair with a twin curled on each side, Margaret began to read. Before she reached the end, both girls were fast asleep, their heads resting on her shoulders. She sat there for a long time, savoring the moment, the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock, and the twins' soft breathing the only sounds. "Oh, Lillian," she whispered, "if only you could see them now." After gently guiding the sleepy girls to bed, she retired to her own room, exhausted but content. Sitting at her vanity, she pulled the locket from her pocket. In the soft lamplight, she examined the golden piece, her fingers tracing the familiar details. "What should I do?" she murmured to the silent room. Should she tell Harrison her suspicions, or simply cherish these precious moments? Placing the locket carefully on the vanity, she prepared for bed, a smile touching her lips as she thought about how her life had transformed. The Sinclair Manor, for so long a mausoleum of memories, now pulsed with new life, and at its heart were Lily and Rose, two small lights that had brought warmth and purpose back into her world. Closing her eyes, Margaret made a silent promise. No matter what the future held, she would protect these girls with everything she had. Perhaps, just perhaps, together they could unravel the mysteries of the past and build a future full of love and happiness. With those comforting thoughts, she drifted off to sleep, lulled by the distant soft breathing of Lily and Rose. Night fell over the Sinclair manor, cloaking it in shadow and silence. Margaret, unable to sleep, roamed the corridors like a restless spirit, her steps inevitably leading her to the twins' room. Standing in the doorway, she watched their sleeping forms, the soft glow of a moon-shaped nightlight making the locket around Lily's neck sparkle. Her heart pounding, Margaret approached the bed, her hands trembling as she reached for the delicate golden object. The cool, familiar touch of the metal unleashed a torrent of memories from 25 years ago. "Mom, I need you to understand," Lillian pleaded, her green eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "This is the hardest decision I've ever made, but I know it's the right one." Margaret felt the world tilt on its axis. "But dear, we could raise the baby together. You don't have to do this alone." Lillian shook her head, a hand resting on her swollen belly. "It's not just about me, Mom. Think of the baby. What future could I offer being a single mother at 18, no college, no career?" Lillian's logic was sound, but to Margaret it felt like the shattering of all her hopes. Seeing her daughter pregnant had been a shock, but the idea of giving the baby up for adoption was almost unbearable. What if Margaret hesitated, her voice trembling? What if you regret it later? Lillian smiled sadly, picking up a small velvet box from the nightstand. From it, she took the golden locket, a family heirloom passed down for generations. "That's why I have this," she explained, holding it to the light. "I'll place it with the baby one day when the time is right. Maybe we'll reunite." Margaret watched, heartbroken, as Lillian packed the locket in a small bag with other keepsakes. "Promise me," Mom, Lillian whispered, her eyes locking with Margaret's. "Promise that if one day this baby comes looking for us, you'll welcome them with open arms." Through a stream of tears, Margaret nodded. "I promise, my love, I promise." Back in the present, Margaret clutched the locket, her own tears falling silently onto the golden surface. The promise she had made so long ago echoed in her mind. Carefully, so as not to wake Lily, she removed the locket from the girl's neck. Holding it to the light, she examined every detail. The delicate floral pattern, the initials L.A., Lillian Grant, meticulously engraved on the back. There was no doubt. This was Lillian's locket. The weight of the realization made her stagger back from the bed, her thoughts a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Could it be possible? After so many fruitless years of searching, could fate have delivered her great-granddaughter, no, great-granddaughters, directly to her? She sank into an armchair, the locket clutched in her hand. The day Lillian left for the hospital was seared into her memory. "It'll be all right, Mom." Lillian had smiled, though her eyes betrayed her fear. That was the last time she saw her daughter alive. The hours that followed were a blur of anxiety. When the doctor finally emerged, his solemn face said it all. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sinclair, we did everything we could, but there were complications." Margaret's world imploded. Between sobs, she managed to ask about the baby. "The child is fine," the doctor assured her, "a healthy girl." But by the time Margaret, devastated by grief, had summoned the strength to look for her granddaughter, it was too late. Following Lillian's wishes, the baby had already been given to the adoption agency. "Oh, Lillian," Margaret whispered into the quiet room, her voice shaking, "have I finally kept my promise?" Her gaze fell on the two sleeping girls. How cruel could fate be, to bring these children into her life only to potentially tear them away again? She knew she had no legal right to them. The soft sound of footsteps broke her reverie. Helen, the housekeeper, appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Sinclair, is everything all right?" I heard voices. Margaret quickly wiped her eyes. "Everything's fine, Helen. I was just checking on the girls." Helen nodded, though her eyes showed she wasn't convinced. "Would you like me to bring some tea, Mom?" "No, thank you. I think I'll try to get some sleep." After Helen left, Margaret leaned over each of the girls, placing a gentle kiss on their foreheads. "I will find the truth," she promised in a whisper, "and I will do everything I can to keep you safe and loved." Back in her own room, she sat at her vanity, her reflection showing a woman torn between hope and fear. Should she tell Harrison? He had a right to know, but she feared the complications. What if she was wrong? With a deep sigh, she opened a drawer and reluctantly placed the locket inside. For now, she would keep her suspicions to herself. She needed more time, more proof. Lying in bed, she closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Images of Lillian, young and radiant, merged with the smiling faces of Lily and Rose. "Give me strength, Lillian," she murmured into the darkness. "Show me the way." As the night wore on, she finally drifted into a restless sleep, her heart torn between the pain of the past and the fragile hope for the future. The Sinclair Manor, once a monument to loss, now held secrets that, if revealed, could heal old wounds and forge new bonds of love. Outside, the moon shone down on the garden, its shadows dancing like the secrets in Margaret's mind. And somewhere, beyond the veil of time, Lillian's spirit smiled, knowing her mother was finally, unknowingly, keeping the promise made so long ago. The truth, like the golden locket, glimmered in the darkness, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Morning arrived at the Sinclair Manor with a different energy. The summer sun bathed the well-tended garden where Lily and Rose played happily under Margaret's watchful eye. The sound of children's laughter, long absent, now echoed across the property. Margaret watched them with a smile, her heart a mixture of joy and apprehension, the locket now hidden in her vanity, weighing on her thoughts. Her reflections were interrupted by the doorbell. Helen hurried to answer, and Margaret heard excited voices at the entrance. Curious, she walked to the front door. "Mrs. Sinclair," exclaimed Diane Wallace, a middle-aged neighbor who lived 2 houses down. "I heard you're caring for 2 little girls. I thought I'd bring a few things that might be helpful." Diane wasn't alone. Behind her stood at least half a dozen other neighbors, all carrying bags, boxes, and covered dishes. "Oh dear," Margaret murmured, surprised by the sudden, well-meaning invasion. Grandma Meg Rose's voice echoed behind her. "Who are these people?" The twins had come closer, their curiosity piqued. Immediately, the neighbors' gazes fell upon them, their faces softening with tenderness. "Well, aren't they adorable?" exclaimed Mr. Fenton, an elderly man who lived on the corner. "I brought some children's books my grandchildren used to read, thought they might like them." One by one, people filed into the house, introducing themselves and offering gifts. Initially stunned, Margaret was soon moved by her neighbor's generosity. "These are clothes my daughter used to wear," said Sarah Jenkins, handing over a box full of colorful dresses. "I hope they fit." Lily and Rose, though shy at first, were quickly enchanted by the attention, their eyes sparkling at each new toy or book. Margaret watched, filled with gratitude, but also concern. How would she explain the girl's situation when people inevitably asked about their parents? Mrs. Sinclair, Diane called, pulling her aside. "We all heard about this through Helen. We want you to know the community is here to help in any way we can." Margaret nodded, emotional. "I appreciate it so much, Diane, truly. I never expected." "We're a community," Mr. Fenton interrupted. "It's our duty to look after one another." The morning turned into an impromptu party. Helen, ever efficient, organized snacks on the backyard porch. The twins, overcoming their shyness, ran from one adult to another, reveling in the attention. Margaret watched with a smile, but her heart was uneasy. Her worries were momentarily interrupted when she noticed Lily standing alone near the rose bushes, clutching the locket, her face contemplative. "Is everything all right?" dear Margaret asked softly. Lily looked up, a shadow of sadness in her eyes. "I miss Mommy," she whispered. Margaret's heart tightened. She knelt beside the girl. "I know you do, my love, and it's okay to miss her." Lily nodded, her fingers stroking the locket. "She said it would keep us safe, that one day we'd find our real family." Margaret's breath caught. Before she could respond, Rose joined them, her face lit with a smile. "Lily, come see what Mrs. Jenkins brought they dolls that look just like us." The two ran back to the group, leaving Margaret alone with her swirling thoughts. The arrival of an unfamiliar car brought her back to reality. A middle-aged woman with hair in a tight bun and thin-rimmed glasses stepped out. "Mrs. Margaret Sinclair," she called, approaching. Margaret stood, smoothing her dress nervously. "Yes, that's me. Sarah Thompson, social worker," the woman introduced herself, extending a hand. "I've been assigned to evaluate the situation regarding the girls in your care." The buzz of the party quieted, all eyes turning to the newcomer. Margaret felt a chill but maintained her composure. "Certainly, Miss Thompson, please come in. We can talk in my study." Leading Sarah inside, she cast a reassuring look at the twins. In the quiet of her study, Margaret sat behind her desk. "Mrs. Sinclair," Sarah began, her tone professional. "I understand you're caring for two girls your grandson found." Margaret nodded. "Yes, that's correct. Lily and Rose Harrison found them a few days ago, alone and frightened." Sarah made notes. "And they've been under your care ever since?" "Yes, Harrison had to travel for business and asked me to care for them temporarily." The social worker raised an eyebrow. "I see. And what about the girls' parents? Any information on them?" Margaret hesitated. How to explain her suspicions without sounding irrational? "Unfortunately, we don't have much information. The girls don't talk much about it." Sarah frowned. "Mrs. Sinclair, I hope you understand the delicacy of this situation. Two children with no identification, no official records in the care of someone with no legal ties." "I understand perfectly," Margaret interrupted firmly, "but I also hope you understand that these children needed a safe and loving home. That's exactly what we're providing." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "I don't doubt your intentions, Mrs. Sinclair, but there are protocols that must be followed." At that moment, a gentle knock interrupted them. Helen entered, followed by Lily and Rose. "You pardon the interruption, ma'am," Helen said, "but the girls insisted on showing something to Miss Thompson." Lily stepped forward, holding out a drawing. "We made this for you," she said timidly. Sarah took the drawing, her expression visibly softening. It was a simple picture showing two girls holding hands with a taller figure, clearly Margaret. "It's our new family," Rose explained proudly. Sarah looked from the drawing to the girls, then to Margaret. Something in her expression shifted. "Well," she said carefully, placing the drawing in her folder, "it seems you two are very happy here." Margaret felt a knot in her throat loosen. "They are a blessing," she said softly, "and will do whatever it takes to ensure their well-being." Sarah rose, her face now kinder. "I'll need to conduct some follow-up visits, of course, and we'll have to start the process of regularizing their situation." But she paused, glancing at the drawing again. "For now, it looks like they're in good hands." As Margaret walked Sarah to the door, she felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Outside, the little party continued. "You know, Mrs. Sinclair," Sarah commented, watching the scene, "in all my years as a social worker, I've rarely seen a community come together like this for children they didn't even know. It says a lot about you in this place." Margaret nodded, touched. "We're blessed with wonderful neighbors." As Sarah left, Margaret found herself surrounded again by well-intentioned neighbors. "Everything's fine," she reassured them. "Miss Thompson was happy with what she saw, but we still have a long road ahead." Diane Wallace stepped forward, taking Margaret's hand. "And we'll be here to help every step of the way," she promised. At that moment, watching Lily and Rose playing happily in the garden, surrounded by the affection of an entire community, Margaret felt a surge of hope. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone. The locket hidden in her room still kept its secrets, but for now, she allowed herself to enjoy the joy of the moment, grateful for the unexpected support and the love blossoming in her once lonely life. Sarah Thompson's office was a state of organized chaos, with files stacked on every surface and the scent of stale coffee in the air. Sitting at her desk, Sarah rubbed her tired eyes, frustrated. For weeks, she had been investigating the origins of Lily and Rose, the mysterious twins living with Margaret Sinclair, but every lead had turned into a dead end. She picked up the phone. "Hello, Mrs. Sinclair, it's Sarah Thompson. I'd like to come by this afternoon to talk. I have some updates." A few hours later, Sarah parked in front of the imposing Sinclair Manor. The serenity of the place was a stark contrast to her turbulent thoughts. Margaret greeted her on the porch, her face a mix of anxiety and hope. "Miss Thompson, it's good to see you. Please come in." As they walked to the study, Sarah caught a glimpse of Lily and Rose playing in the garden, their laughter echoing across the lawn. The sight fueled her determination to solve the mystery. In the comfort of Margaret's study, Sarah opened her folder. "Mrs. Sinclair," she began, her professional tone masking her frustration. "I've spent the last few weeks investigating Lily and Rose's background extensively. Unfortunately, I don't have good news." Margaret's heart tightened. "What did you find?" Sarah sighed. "To be frank, I found nothing. It's as if these girls simply didn't exist before they showed up here." She outlined her investigation. "I started with orphanages and shelters within a 200-meter radius. None of them have records of twins matching Lily and Rose's description. We expanded the search to the entire state. Then neighboring states, nothing." Margaret nodded, her face pale. Sarah continued. "We checked birth records from every hospital in the region. For the past 5 years, no pair of twins with their characteristics, not even individual births that could match." "What about missed children?" Margaret asked, her voice shaky. Sarah shook her head. "That was one of the first things we checked. There are no reports of missing twins matching their age or description, not even single missing children who could be them." Margaret leaned back, absorbing the information. Sarah could see the internal struggle in her eyes. "Mrs. Sinclair," Sarah said softly, "I know this is hard, but I have to ask, is there anything at all the girls might have mentioned about their part? Even the smallest detail could give us a clue." Margaret hesitated, her thoughts turning to the locket, but she decided to keep that to herself for now. "They don't say much about their past," Margaret answered cautiously, "but Lily mentioned once that their mother left them on a bench promising to come back." Sarah jotted that down. "That matches what your grandson Harrison told me about, where he found them. Anything else? Names? Places? Any detail?" Margaret shook her head. "Nothing concrete. They seem reluctant to talk about it." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "That's common in children who've experienced trauma. They may be blocking painful memories." A heavy silence filled the room. Sarah sensed there was more to the story, something Margaret wasn't sharing. "Mrs. Sinclair," she finally said, "I need to be honest with you. The lack of information makes our situation complicated legally. We can't just ignore the fact that we have 2 children with no documentation or known history." Margaret felt a chill. "What does that mean for Lily and Rose?" Sarah hesitated. "For now, they're safe here under your temporary care, but eventually, if we can't establish their origins or locate relatives, the state might intervene." "No," Margaret exclaimed, standing abruptly. "We can't let them be put into the system. They finally found a home stability." "I understand," Sarah soothed, "and believe me, I'll do everything in my power to prevent that. But we have to be prepared for all possibilities." Margaret sat again, her mind a whirlwind. Sarah continued. "I'll keep investigating Mrs. Sinclair. Maybe we can try a different approach. Ads in newspapers, or even on local television someone might recognize them." Margaret nodded, though the idea of publicly exposing the twins made her uneasy. "What about the girls?" Margaret asked. "How should we proceed with them in the meantime?" Sarah smiled gently. "Just keep doing what you're doing. Give them love, stability, and safety. If they feel ready to talk more about their past, listen without pushing. Every small detail could be crucial." As Sarah prepared to leave, Margaret accompanied her to the door. Outside, Lily and Rose were still playing, their laughter filling the air. "They seem so happy here," Sarah commented. Margaret nodded, a lump forming in her throat. They're a blessing. I'll do whatever it takes to keep them safe and happy." Sarah placed a comforting hand on Margaret's arm. "We'll keep working on it, Mrs. Sinclair. Don't give up hope." As Sarah's car disappeared, Margaret remained on the porch, watching the twins. Her heart was torn between fear of the unknown and her determination to protect the two children who had brought so much light into her life. The locket, her guarded secret, weighed heavily on her mind, but for now, Margaret decided to keep her suspicions to herself. The future was uncertain, but she would face it one day at a time, with Lily and Rose by her side. Harrison's taxi wound its way along the tree-lined road leading to the Sinclair Manor. Exhausted after an intense week of negotiations in London, he could hardly wait to be home, but more than anything, he was anxious about Lily and Rose. When the cab finally stopped, Harrison was momentarily stunned. The garden, once immaculate yet austere, now overflowed with life, and a small swing hung from the old oak tree. Taking his suitcase, he walked to the front door. Before he could ring, the door swung open, revealing his grandmother. "Harrison," she exclaimed, her face lit up with a smile he hadn't seen in years. "Welcome home, dear." But before he could respond, two small figures darted out from behind Margaret, throwing themselves into his arms with shrieks of delight. "Uncle Harrison, you're back?" Harrison stumbled backward, surprised by their force and the surge of emotion within him. Lily and Rose, who just a week ago had been two frightened, silent children, now laughed and chattered excitedly. "Grandma Meg taught us how to make cookies, and we planted flowers in the garden. There's a new swing, come see." Looking over their heads, Harrison caught his grandmother's eye, tears glistening. Margaret merely smiled, beckoning them all inside. The interior of the manor was equally transformed. Colorful drawings adorned the walls, toys were neatly arranged, and the air smelled of freshly baked cookies. "My goodness," Grandma Harrison murmured, still hugging the twins. "What happened here?" Margaret laughed, a sound full of life. "Two tiny magical fairies invaded our home and brought summer back into our lives." The girls giggled, finally releasing Harrison. Grandma Meg Lily said, tugging at Margaret's sleeve, "Can we show Uncle Harrison what we did in the library?" "Of course," dear Margaret replied. "Why don't you two go set up the surprise while Harrison and I talk for a bit?" The twins nodded eagerly, running off. Once they were gone, Harrison turned to his grandmother, his expression a mix of joy and confusion. "My grandma? I don't even know where to start. They seem so different, so happy, and you." He paused, studying her face. "You look years younger." Margaret smiled, sitting next to him. "It's been quite a week, Harrison. These girls may. They brought something back to this house, something I didn't know was missing." Harrison nodded. "What about the social worker? Any progress in finding out where they came from?" Margaret's smile wavered. "Sarah Thompson has been working tirelessly, but there are no records, Harrison. It's as if Lily and Rose just appeared out of nowhere." Harrison frowned. "That complicates things, doesn't it?" "Yes," Margaret sighed, "but for now they're safe here, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep it that way." At that moment the twins returned, eager to show him their surprise. Taking his hands, they led him to the library. An entire corner had been converted into a reading fort, complete with cushions and blankets. "Look," Uncle Harrison Rose exclaimed, pointing to a large poster on the wall. "We made a story mural." The mural was a collage of drawings and short stories. At the center was a portrait of the family, Harrison, Margaret, Lily, and Rose, all holding hands. Harrison felt a lump form in his throat. It's wonderful, girls. You did an amazing job." While the twins proudly showed him every detail, Harrison noticed something glinting around Lily's neck. The locket. He had almost forgotten about it. "Lily," he said gently, "that locket, you still wear it all the time." Lily nodded, clutching the golden piece. "Mommy said it was special, that it would keep us safe." Harrison exchanged a meaningful look with Margaret, who had joined them. There was an untold story about that locket hanging in the air. "Girls," Margaret interjected gently, "how about you? Go help Helen prepare a special snack to celebrate Uncle Harrison's return. I'm sure he's starving after his long trip." The twins agreed, running off to the kitchen. As soon as they were gone, Harrison turned to his grandmother. "Grandma, that locket, is there something you're not telling me?" Margaret took a deep breath. "Harrison, there's something I need to tell you something about Lillian, your aunt." Harrison leaned forward, intrigued. He knew very little about Lillian, only that she had died young. "That locket," Elizabeth began, her voice trembling, "belonged to Lillian. It was her most precious possession." But how, Harrison asked, confused. Margaret raised her hand. "Lillian was pregnant when she died?" "Harrison, she had decided to give the baby up for adoption." Harrison's mouth fell open. I had no idea. Why didn't you ever tell me?" "It was too painful," Margaret admitted, "and after so many years without finding the baby, it seemed pointless to reopen that wound." Harrison processed the information. "But the locket, you think Lily and Rose?" Margaret shook her head. "I'm not sure, Harrison. Part of me wants to believe it's true, that somehow fate brought my great-granddaughters back to me. But another part fears I'm seeing connections where there are none, just because I desperately want it to be real." Harrison stood, walking to the window. Outside, he could see Lily and Rose helping Helen in the garden. "So what do we do now, Grandma?" he asked softly. Margaret joined him. "For now, we keep loving them and protecting them, and maybe in time the truth will come out." Just then, the twins returned with a tray of sandwiches and lemonade. "We made your favorite snack," Uncle Harrison Rose announced proudly. Harrison smiled, his heart filling with a love he didn't know he was capable of. "Thank you, sweethearts. It looks delicious." As they all settled down, Lily looked seriously at Harrison and Margaret. "Uncle Harrison, Grandma Meg," she began, her small voice determined, "we want to ask you something." "Of course," dear Margaret responded, exchanging a worried glance with Harrison. We want to stay here forever," Lily said, her eyes wide and hopeful. Rose chimed in. "It's just we love you both so much, and we don't ever want to leave." Harrison felt his heart tighten. He looked at Margaret, seeing the same emotion in her eyes. "Oh, my darlings," Margaret said, pulling them into a hug. "As far as we're concerned, you can stay here forever." Harrison joined the hug, forming a protective circle. "We'll do everything in our power to make that happen," he promised. As he embraced them, he couldn't help but notice the gleam of the locket. Regardless of their origin, he knew these two children were already family. The afternoon passed in a blur of stories and laughter. Despite his travel fatigue, Harrison felt energized. Watching them with Margaret, he realized how much the manor had changed. That night, after the girls were tucked in, Harrison and Elizabeth sat on the porch. "You know," Grandma Harrison began, "when I left the girls here, I was worried I didn't know if it was the right decision. But now—" Margaret smiled. "Now it feels like it was destiny, doesn't it?" Harrison nodded. "Exactly. It's as if they were always meant to be here." "Harrison," Margaret said, her voice serious, "no matter what happens, no matter the truth about their origins, we need to be ready to fight for them. You understand that, don't you?" Harrison took his grandmother's hand. "I understand perfectly, Grandma, and I'm fully committed. Lily and Rose are family now, no matter what." As night fell, the Sinclair Manor rested in a comfortable silence. Upstairs, two little girls slept peacefully, feeling truly at home for the first time. In each member of this newly formed family, a flame of hope and love burned brightly, promising better days to come. The day dawned gray and rainy, as if the sky mirrored the expectant atmosphere hanging over the Sinclair Manor. Harrison, who had spent a restless night pondering the changes in his life, found Margaret already in the kitchen. "Good morning, Grandma," he murmured, accepting a cup of coffee. Margaret smiled, though her eyes betrayed a similar lack of sleep. "Good morning, dear. The girls are still asleep. I thought we could chat a bit before they wake up." Harrison nodded. "Grandma, about the locket." But before he could continue, light footsteps interrupted them. Lily and Rose entered, still in their pajamas. "Good morning, Grandma Meg." "Good morning, Uncle Harrison," they said in unison. Margaret immediately shifted into grandmother mode, serving hot chocolate and toast. Harrison watched, amazed at how easily she had assumed this role. Breakfast passed in comfortable silence, though Harrison noticed the twins seemed quieter than usual, exchanging meaningful looks. After the meal, as Margaret cleared the dishes, Lily finally spoke, her voice a whisper. "Grandma Meg, Uncle Harrison, can we talk to you?" The serious tone made everyone pause. Margaret nodded, guiding them to the living room. "Of course, dear," she answered, sitting between them. "What's on your mind?" Rose took her sister's hand for courage. Lily touched the locket around her neck. We want to tell you about our mommy." Lily began, her voice trembling. Harrison and Margaret exchanged quick looks, their hearts pounding. "It's all right," Harrison encouraged gently. "You can tell us whatever you want. We're here to listen." Rose took the lead. "Our mommy, she left us on that bench at the square. She said she had something important to take care of and would be right back," Lily continued. "She made us promise to stick together no matter what, and she gave us this." She touched the locket, tears in her eyes. "Mommy said the locket was very special," Rose explained, "that it was the key to finding our real family one day." Harrison felt a knot in his throat. "How long did you wait on the bench?" The twins looked at each other. "A lot of days," Lily finally answered. "It got cold and we were hungry." "But we couldn't leave," Rose added quickly. "Mommy promised she'd come back, and we didn't want her not to find us." Margaret drew the girls closer, her eyes moist. "Oh, my sweethearts, you were so brave." Harrison knelt before them. "Lily Rose, do you remember anything else about your mom? Her name, maybe, or where you lived before?" They fell silent, their faces creased in concentration. Finally, Lily spoke. "Her name was Catherine, and she cried a lot. She always said she was sorry that she had no choice." Rose nodded. "We lived in lots of different places. We never stayed anywhere for long." Harrison's heart ached at the image of two small children living such a nomadic life. Margaret, her voice thick with emotion, asked, "And this locket, girls, did your mother say anything else about it?" Lily held the locket reverently. "She said it was her mother's, that one day it would lead us home to our real family." Harrison and Margaret exchanged significant looks. This was more than just a sad story of abandonment. It was a connection they were just beginning to understand. "Girls," Harrison said softly, "you were very brave to tell us all this. We're so proud of you." Margaret hugged the twins tightly. "And I want you to know that no matter what happens, you have a home here, with us. We're your family now." Margaret's words seemed to burst a dam. Lily and Rose began to cry, years of fear and loneliness finally released. Harrison joined the hug, and for several minutes they stayed like that, united in their shared emotion. When they finally separated, a sense of relief filled the air. Uncle Harrison Rose asked, wiping her tears, "Do you think we'll see our mommy again someday?" Harrison hesitated, glancing at Margaret. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I promise we'll do everything we can to find out what happened to her." Lily, who had been quiet, suddenly asked, "Grandma Meg, why do you always look at my locket in that funny way?" The question caught Margaret off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, but Harrison quickly interjected. "How about we do something fun right now? I think we could all use a distraction after such a serious talk." The twins agreed, and soon they were all in the kitchen, the sweet smell of baking cookies momentarily banishing the shadows. While the girls decorated, Harrison pulled Margaret aside. "Grandma," he whispered, "I think we need to talk. There's something about that locket you're not telling me, isn't there?" Margaret nodded, her eyes on the twins. "Yes," Harrison and I think it's time you knew the whole truth, but not here, not now tonight, after the girls are asleep." Harrison agreed, sensing a revelation was imminent. For now he allowed himself to be drawn back to the table, to the bright smiles and frosting-covered hands of Lily and Rose. The rest of the day passed in a mix of light-hearted activities and quiet introspection. That night, after tucking the girls in, Harrison found Margaret in the library, a cup of untouched tea before her. The look in her eyes told him this would change everything. "So, Grandma," he said, sitting across from her, "I guess it's time you told me about this locket." Margaret nodded, taking a deep breath. The truth, long guarded, was about to be revealed. Margaret stared at the teacup in her hands, the cold liquid reflecting her aged face. The Sinclair Manors Library, usually a refuge of peace, felt suffocating that night. "Harrison," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "what I'm about to tell you should have been said a long time ago." Harrison settled into the leather armchair, sensing the tension in the air. "I'm ready, Grandma." It was 1999. Margaret continued. "Lillian was only 18 when she found out she was pregnant. The baby's father was from a traditional family, but when he heard about the pregnancy, he just vanished." She paused, recalling her memories. "Your grandfather? He was furious. He spoke of scandal, of tarnishing the family name. Lillian was practically forced to agree to adoption." Harrison felt his heart clench. "But why didn't anyone ever tell me?" Shame, fear, guilt. Margaret sighed heavily. Lillian died during childhood birth due to complications before she went to the hospital. She made me promise that if one day the baby came looking for us, I would welcome them with open arms. She left the locket, hoping it could serve as a bridge to the future. "The same locket Lily wears," Harrison murmured, realization hitting him like lightning. Margaret nodded. "Exactly when I saw that locket around Lily's neck, my world stopped. I thought it was impossible. But the more I watch the girls, the more I see Lillian in them." "But Grandma, if Lillian only had one baby, how do we explain the twins?" "Lillian's baby was a girl Margaret revealed, probably their mother, this Catherine. They mentioned the dates line up." Harrison stood, walking to the window. Outside, he could see Lily and Rose asleep in their beds. So Lily and Rose would be my second cousins. "Yes," Margaret confirmed, "and my great-granddaughters." Silence fell between them, broken only by the ticking of the old clock. "We need to find Catherine," Harrison declared, finally. "If she's really Lillian's daughter, she needs to know she has family here." Margaret joined him at the window. "But how we only have her first name?" "We have the locket," Harrison replied, "and now that we know its origin, we can trace the adoption records from that time. Sarah, the social worker, can help." "And the girls?" Margaret asked, worry in her voice. "How will we tell them?" "For now, we don't," Harrison decided. "They've been through so much already. We need to be certain before we raise their hopes." Margaret agreed, though her heart felt heavy with the secret. "Harrison, if Catherine really is Lillian's daughter, then we'll do our best to help her too," Harrison finished. "We're family, after all." The rest of the night was spent planning. Harrison would contact Sarah first thing in the morning to begin a discreet search of adoption records. Margaret promised to look through old documents for any additional clues. Climbing the stairs to bed, they paused by the twins' room. Lily and Rose slept peacefully, their little hands intertwined. "Look at them," Harrison Margaret whispered. "After so long a piece of Lillian has come back to us." Harrison put an arm around his grandmother's shoulders. "And this time, we won't let our family be torn apart again." The locket lay silently on Lily's neck, its faint gleam seeming to promise that soon all secrets would come to light. Margaret quietly closed the door, carrying the weight of a promise finally on the verge of being fulfilled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in years, she felt hope. The Boston Public Garden was quiet that autumn afternoon. Catherine Anderson walked slowly among the empty benches, her steps rustling through dry leaves. Her green eyes, now clear and alert after months of recovery, scanned the place where she'd made the hardest decision of her life. Lily rose. She whispered into the wind, her fingers gripping the golden locket around her neck. Margaret watched her newly found granddaughter from the entrance to the garden, her heart heavy with decades of withheld love. Harrison stood beside her, gently supporting her arm. "Are you sure we're ready for this, Grandma?" he asked quietly. Margaret nodded. "The girls deserve to know the whole truth, and Catherine, she's worked so hard to get here." Sarah Thompson, the social worker, checked her watch. "Helen should be arriving with the girls any moment. Remember, we'll stick to the plan we discussed." The sound of children's laughter cut through the autumn air. Catherine froze, her whole body trembling as she recognized that familiar sound. Lily and Rose entered the garden, holding hands with Helen, their cheeks rosy from the walk. They stopped abruptly at the sight of Catherine, immediate recognition lighting their eyes. Mommy Rose whispered, her small voice uncertain. Catherine fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "My girls and my darlings." Lily, always the protector, stepped in front of her sister, her hand automatically going to the locket at her neck, identical to the one Catherine wore. "You came back," Lily said, not as a question but a statement. "Yes, my love," Catherine replied, her voice quavering, "and this time, I'm here to stay." Margaret and Harrison approached slowly, positioning themselves protectively near the twins. Sarah watched closely, ready to intervene. Lily rose. Margaret called softly, "Remember when we talked about your mommy, how she was sick and had to go get help?" The girls nodded, their eyes never leaving Catherine. "Well," Harrison continued, "she worked very hard to get better, and there's something very special you need to know." Catherine stood up slowly, wiping her tears. "When I was little just like you," she began, "I was also separated from my mother. She was Grandma Meg's daughter." The twins' eyes widened, turning to Margaret. So Rose began. "Grandma Meg is really our great-grandma," Lily finished. Margaret beamed through her tears. "Yes, my dears, we really are a family." "The locket," Lily said suddenly, looking at Catherine's necklace. "Was it hers?" Catherine nodded. "It belonged to my mother Lillian, your grandmother. She wanted to make sure one day we'd find our way back home." "And we did," Rose whispered, taking a small step toward her mother. The next moment seemed to happen in slow motion. Rose ran into Catherine's arms. Lily hesitated a second before following her sister. Catherine enveloped them in a tight embrace, 3 hearts beating in unison after so long apart. Margaret and Harrison joined the embrace, forming a protective circle. Sarah discreetly wiped away a tear. Mommy Lily said, her voice muffled against Catherine's shoulder, "Are you going to leave again?" Catherine pulled back enough to look into her daughter's eyes. "Never again, my love. I'm clean, I'm better, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost." "But can we still live with Grandma Meg Rose?" asked anxiously. "Of course you can," Catherine smiled. "Actually, if it's all right with Grandma Meg, I was thinking of moving near the manor. That way we can rebuild our family step by step the right way." Margaret took Catherine's hand. "There's the guest house behind the property. It's yours if you want it." Catherine looked at her grandmother with immense gratitude. "I don't deserve so much." "Yes, you do," Harrison interjected. "Everyone deserves a second chance. You've proven you're ready for yours." The twins, still clinging to their mother, started sharing stories of their months at the manor. Catherine listened to every word, her eyes shining with love and regret. "Tell me more," she asked. "I want to know everything about your lives." Sarah approached gently. "How about we continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable? It's starting to get chilly." "Can we get hot chocolate?" Rose suggested hopefully. At the corner cafe, Harrison grinned, where it all began. The group walked together, Catherine in the center with a twin on each side. Margaret followed, her heart overflowing with joy at seeing 3 generations of her family finally united. In the cafe, Helen left discreetly after emotional farewells. Sarah remained, keeping a professional eye on things. Catherine began after everyone had their hot chocolate. "Do you have your own room at the manor?" "Yes," Lily exclaimed. "It's blue like the sky, and there's a swing in the garden," Rose added. "Uncle Harrison put it up for us." Catherine smiled at Harrison. "Thank you for taking such good care of them." "They're family," he replied simply. Margaret observed the scene, remembering Lillian. Her daughter had left too soon, but her final wish had been fulfilled. Grandma Meg Lily said suddenly, "Can you tell Mommy the story of the brave princess, the one you always tell us before bed?" Catherine looked at Margaret curiously. "Actually," Margaret began, "that story is about your grandmother Lillian. She was the bravest princess I've ever known." As Margaret told the story, Catherine held her daughter's hands, absorbing every word about the mother she never knew. "Tell she would have loved all 3 of you," Margaret concluded softly, "as much as I do." The cafe bell jingled. Sarah discreetly checked her watch. "I think it's time to go," she suggested. A flash of panic crossed Catherine's eyes, but she stayed strong. "Will we see each other tomorrow?" she asked the girls. Actually, Harrison interjected, "I was thinking we could help your mom move into the guest house this weekend. What do you say?" The twins' faces lit up. "Can we help decorate?" Rose asked excitedly. "Of course you can," Catherine smiled. "I want it to be a special place for all of us." Margaret stood, wrapping Catherine in a tight hug. "Welcome back to the family, dear." The farewells were emotional, but no longer painful. Catherine watched as Margaret and Harrison took the girls away, waving until they disappeared. Sarah stayed by her side. "You've done incredible work," the social worker said. 3 months sober, a steady job, a secured place to live. You're really committed to this change." Catherine touched her locket. "You know, I spent so long running from the past, trying to forget who I was. But this locket, it was as if Lillian, my mother, was guiding me back home all along." Sarah smiled. "Sometimes the longest road is the one that takes us exactly where we need to be." At the Sinclair Manor, Lily and Rose couldn't stop talking about the meeting. As Helen helped them with their bath, Margaret and Harrison spoke softly in the library. "Do you think it'll work out?" Harrison asked. Margaret glanced at a portrait of Lillian. "It'll work, because we're all willing to make it work. Catherine has truly changed. The girls are safe and loved. It's all Lillian could have wished for." In the blue room, Margaret came to give them their goodnight kiss. Grandma Meg Lily called sleepily, "Now we have 2 homes, don't we?" Margaret smiled, tucking them in. "Yes, my love, and most importantly, we have a complete family to fill those homes with love." As the girls drifted off, Margaret stood watching her great-granddaughters. Lily's locket glowed faintly, no longer a symbol of loss, but a reminder that true love finds its way home. At the recovery house, Catherine got ready for bed, her heart lighter than ever. On her bedside table sat a recent photo of the twins next to an old one of Lillian that Margaret had given her. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, "for never giving up on me, even when I'd given up on myself." And so, under the same starry sky, 4 generations of Sinclair women, Lillian in spirit, Margaret in her wisdom, Catherine in her redemption, and the twins in their innocence, were finally connected by a love that no circumstance could erase. The locket, its purpose fulfilled, had guided them all back home. The summer sun bathed the Sinclair Manor's gardens on a perfect Sunday afternoon. A year had passed since that emotional reunion in the Boston Public Garden, and the once melancholic property now overflowed with joy. Catherine Grant, elegant in a floral dress that highlighted her green eyes, Lillian's eyes, oversaw the preparations for the family's annual picnic. Her movements were confident, a world away from the fragile woman who had returned a year ago. Her work as a counselor at the New Hope Recovery Center had given her new purpose. "Careful with those flowers, sweetie," she called, seeing Rose run through the garden with a freshly cut bouquet, there for Grandma Meg's special table. Lily followed at a more cautious pace, carrying a basket of lavender. Now 5 years old, the twins had blossomed in the stable, loving environment. Margaret emerged from the manor, leaning on Harrison's arm. At 73, she looked more vibrant than ever. "My little gardeners," she exclaimed, opening her arms to her great-granddaughters. "What beautiful flowers you've picked." Harrison smiled. Over the past year, his role had evolved from savior to beloved uncle. Nights of stories, piano lessons, and gardening adventures had forged an unbreakable bond. Uncle Harrison Lily called, running toward him. "Did you bring the special present?" Harrison winked. "It's in the car, Princess, but it's a surprise, remember." Catherine joined them with a tray of lemonade, the sun glinting off the identical golden lockets she and Lily wore, the third now displayed in a crystal box on the manor's mantel. Mom Rose asked, "Are you going to tell the story today?" Catherine exchanged a meaningful look with Margaret. "Yes, my love, today is a special day after all." Helen, the housekeeper, appeared with a still warm apple pie. Made with the apples you picked yesterday, she smiled at the twins. The garden had transformed, bursting with color and life. Rose tended her own small patch of wildflowers, while Lily preferred the herb garden. "Remember when we first came here?" Harrison asked, spreading a large checkered blanket. The garden was so different. Like all of us, Catherine finished softly, tucking a strand of Lily's hair behind her ear. Margaret settled into a garden chair. "Lillian would be so proud," she murmured. The twins sat at her feet, ready for the story. "Tell us about Grandma Lillian," Great-Grandma Lily pleaded. Margaret cleared her throat. "Well, 25 years ago in this very manor, there lived a very special young woman named Lillian." Catherine sat nearby, her heart warmed by the familiar tale. The story of her biological mother was no longer a painful mystery, but a testament to love's power. Lillian knew she had to make hard choices, Margaret continued, but her love was so great that it transcended time and distance. She left a very special gift. "The lockets," Rose exclaimed, touching her sister's necklace. "Exactly," Catherine smiled, "so one day we could find our way back home." Harrison returned from the car with a large wrapped package. Speaking of special gifts, the twins bounced with excitement. "It's for the whole family," Harrison explained, unveiling a beautiful painting. It was a portrait of the family in the garden, with the manor in the background. The artist had perfectly captured the golden light and their genuine smiles, and there, almost ethereally, Lillian's figure seemed to smile down from the sky. "Oh, Harrison," Margaret whispered, tears running down her face. Catherine hugged her daughters, who gazed at the painting in wonder. "It's perfect," she said, her voice breaking. The afternoon was a quiet, meaningful celebration. Catherine talked about her work at the recovery center. Just yesterday, she recounted, a young mother arrived completely lost when I told her our story. I saw a spark of hope in her eyes. "You're a guardian angel, Mom," Rose declared proudly. Harrison spoke of his plans to cut back on business trips. Some things are more important than million-dual contracts. He smiled, ruffling Lily's hair. Margaret observed how at peace Catherine seemed. The past year had been a time of healing for the entire family. "Girls," Catherine called as dusk approached, "how about we show everyone the surprise we prepared?" Lily ran inside, returning with her violin. Rose sat at the piano that had been moved to the porch. The opening notes of Amazing Grace drifted across the garden. Lily focused on her violin, and Rose, her small fingers dancing over the keys, created a melody of redemption. Catherine watched with infinite pride. Margaret held Catherine's hand, tears flowing silently. Lillian loved this hymn, she whispered. When the last note dissolved, a reverent silence fell, then erupted into applause. Bra Harrison exclaimed, hugging his grandnieces. Helen appeared with hot chocolate, a tradition from that first cold night. "I think it's time for the final gift," Margaret announced, signaling to Helen. The housekeeper returned with a large, leather-bound photo album. "It's a family album," Margaret explained, opening it. The pages told their story, photos of Lillian, the few recovered images of Catherine as a baby, and then the last year. The final photo showed the entire family on the manor staircase, their smiles genuine. "And we have plenty of pages left to fill." Catherine smiled, hugging her daughters. As night fell, fairy lights installed by James began to glow in the garden. The twins ran among them, their laughter echoing. "You know," Harrison commented, "sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't stopped at that bench that night." "Fate has its ways," Margaret answered wisely. Lillian knew that when she left those lockets. Catherine watched her daughters play, her heart overflowing. A year ago, she was at rock bottom. Now she was home. Mom Lily called, running back. "Tell us again how you found a U.S. at the square." Catherine smiled, pulling them close. Well, it was an afternoon a lot like this one. The story was retold, not with pain, but with gratitude. Helen began gathering cups, but Margaret stopped her. "Stay with us, Helen. You're part of this family, too." The housekeeper sat, touched. "Look," Rose suddenly exclaimed, pointing to the sky, a shooting star. Everyone looked up. "Make a wish," Margaret whispered. The twins shut their eyes tight. "What did you wish for?" Mommy Lily asked. Catherine hugged them, looking with love at Margaret, Harrison, and Helen. "I don't need to wish for anything, my love. I already have everything I ever dreamed of." As sleepiness crept in, Catherine led the twins inside, followed by Margaret. In the blue room, Catherine sat between their beds. Mom Rose murmured drowsily, "Do you think Grandma Lillian is happy with us?" Catherine kissed her forehead. "I'm sure she is, my love. She's smiling at us right now." "From the stars?" Lily asked, half asleep. "So from the stars," Catherine confirmed softly. Margaret watched from the door, her heart full. The Sinclair Manor had become a true home. Downstairs, Harrison and Helen tidied up. The new painting had its place of honor in the living room, next to Lillian's locket. "It was a perfect day," Helen remarked. Harrison nodded, gazing at the sky. Lillian would be proud. Catherine came down, finding Margaret in the library. "Are the girls asleep?" Margaret asked. Like angels, Catherine smiled, sitting beside her. "Thank you, Mom." Margaret looked at her, surprised. It was the first time Catherine had called her that. For what, dear? For never giving up, for keeping the promise you made to Lillian, for giving us a home." The two women embraced, years of pain dissolving. The lights of the Sinclair Manor gradually went out. The garden, still lit by fairy lights, looked like a fairy tale. The lockets gleamed softly, their purpose fulfilled. The year had passed, but for the Sinclair family, it was only the beginning of a new story of love, redemption, and second chances. Under the starry summer sky, the family rested in peace, united by blood, strengthened by love, and guided by Lillian's eternal memory. The future stretched before them, bright and full of promise. The locket on the mantel glinted one last time before night enveloped the manor. Its purpose was complete, a reunited family, healed hearts, and a love that transcended time. At the Sinclair Manor, everyone had finally found their way home.